Well, good morning. I hope you have a good time here. I'm enjoying it. Well, as you see, I'm speaking from another field. So my pitch this morning will be about VR, and I've called it the power of VR. As introduced, I'm working for the university already for more than 25 years in design, and in 2016 I started using virtual reality in computational design. But first of all, maybe introduce a bit about the technology. Virtual reality, VR, AR, augmented reality, MR, mixed reality, IX, there are all kinds of terms for this. Do you know those? Any one of you using augmented reality? Yes? Okay. Pokemon Go or other things? Other things. Okay, very good. Developer. Okay. So what are the differences? VR, AR, augmented reality means that you project something, a layer, on top of the physical world. Yeah? So games do that. There are a lot of apps from companies, and we use it in architectural and urban design. Virtual reality means that you use, for example, a headset, or you're in a cave, and you're completely immersed in another environment. So we're here now. Yeah? But I could be in another place. I could be investigating, analyzing a building or a project in another part of the world. And you can also play games with that. So probably a couple of you are aware of that as well, like Half-Life Alyx. There are different types of headsets, of course, but I like this one most. Virtual experimentation, this one, it's wireless. So you don't have this wire to your computer, you're not bounded in that sense. It uses your brain power instead of a lot of power from a computer, and it uses your imagination. The only thing is, we cannot steer it. I cannot help you out, and I cannot test things with you. Some of you used VR before? Anyone? You again? Yes? 1, 2, 3, 4? Wow, very good. Today my talk is about VR as design tool. I see three potentials of VR. Design in VR, which means that you build and test in an immersive world. Design with VR, which means that you communicate, for example, with stakeholders. And design through VR, which means you collaborate in VR through VR. And I will show you how we do that at TU Delft. In education, we are running VR since 2016. Our students start working in 3D environments from week 1. Instead of making maps, instead of making small models, they start building a 3D environment and experience it scale 1-to-1 in an immersive way. We also have other projects. It's called Mega, Beyond 3D, and at the moment we are running the most exciting one with architecture. So this is how it started. We started actually in the basement. I'm in front of it. We started in a small place in the basement with a limited number of VR sets. It grew from 15 students to 30 students. We have now 60 students following this course. And the funny thing is that after 8 weeks, they present in VR. So this is a final presentation 2016. And what you see is someone is presenting and other people are following in VR, and we can follow it on the big screen as well. And the best presentations were those where people align the PowerPoint with what's happening in VR. With Mega, it's a course about huge buildings. You cannot imagine how large they are. We used to instruct and adapt, you could say, the buildings and understand better what was going on. And like I said, the Virtual Architecture Museum, it's really about using VR. It's about a virtual environment where you have to design for. And one of the nicest pictures we found in that course was this. Already in the 60s, people were developing VR. It was not a headset, it was a big station, you could say, and it was 6 or 7 dimensions. It was 3D, it had motion, it had color, it had sound, it had smells, it had wind. So wow. This is how the course started. So we start with 6 students. And, going back, and we gave a lot of instructions. And what is important here, when using VR, it's not there immediately. You have to make your own content. Yeah, you have to build your content in 3D in a good way, otherwise it will not work. You have to optimize it, and that's what we learn the students. So it's not only talking about design in those courses, there's a lot going on in the background to make sure that the students can deliver the content. Design with VR, communicate with stakeholders, test concepts. We did a project with architectural firm. This is their new building. They had no idea how to organize the wayfinding in the final design. So we tested different ways of wayfinding strategies, and well, we rebuilt the whole building, because if you get a BIM model, it's far too heavy, so we had to make the building smaller. To make it usable, we made this virtual model and people ran through it. And we collected information about how people went through the building, where they started, how much time it took, what route it took, where they were looking in different directions. And based on that, we could advise the architects which wayfinding strategy worked best. This is how it worked with the school, the teachers, parents were involved. Another project which is coming up to that is a graduate student of mine who actually combined a lot of projects. This project was about the design of a railway station and how can you reduce stress. So she made a route from outdoor to indoor and made different designs, and we collected data about how people felt, how they experienced it. We had questionnaires, but we also had the biometrics, so we measured their stress rates. Going back maybe one slide. So people attended a session, you have to subscribe, you have to answer a couple of questions, you go into the VR, and at the end we get the data. And to get that done, it's not just making a 3D model and putting on a headset. So you may have to make a whole game. A game in which people play, where you collect the information. So you have to build a 3D environment. You have to build the procedures, what's happening there, to make sure it's a controlled environment. And you can imagine, when you do this in real life and you walk through a station, that you might encounter other people. And every situation is different. We want the same situation. Every time a new person goes through the model, it should be the same situation so we can compare. At the end, she collected a lot of data about the different scenarios, where people were looking, and how much time it took for them to go through it. And what we saw is there's a large, big learning, line in how to understand how our buildings work. So we also had to mix up the sequence of the scenarios. And at the end, it was clear which scenario worked best. So this is a data-driven, visually driven project. And, well, I heard there's landscape here a bit, so maybe that's nice. Another project, we tested a neighborhood in the northern part of the Netherlands. And the idea was to test it on health. How can we make the neighborhood healthier? Give people access to good food, physical exercise, social interaction. So we used the VR to investigate where the issues were in the area. And then we, together with the city architect, we made new designs, proposals, we tested them again, and at the end we delivered the concluding design. And this is how it looks. So this is, we used Enscape here. It's a platform used by architects and urban designers, and it's not, in that sense, not a functional VR. The projects I showed before are functional. We collect a lot of data. In this case, it's pure visual. People go through it, they respond to what's happening. The differences we saw between doing this and giving maps to people and models, here we talk about details in the design. We're not talking about the size of the building over there, the amount of floors. We're talking about the material on the floor, difference in height in 10 centimeters, logical pathways. So we had a completely different discussion with the people living in that neighborhood, what they needed and what kind of designs they preferred. So there were all kinds of designs from, let's say, realistic to very futuristic, and we had them walking through it. So you can see the arrows on the screen. So the arrows, that's what people had to follow. The final part, collaborate through VR. I think the potential is to work together. It's already good if we improve that people use VR more. VR behind the desk, VR in the beginning of design, not only as final presentation, because with the one-to-one, it offers a real asset to design. What's more important, if we can collaborate in VR. Let's say a designer from Prague collaborates with a designer from Amsterdam, and together you're in the same model, and that's possible. Here we have such an interaction. A lot of people are there, they're there together, and we use software like Archeo for this. Archeo is a spin-off from the Netherlands, and there you can really see each other's avatars. You can collaborate together, you can go in different scales, one-to-one scale, let's say on the urban scale, but also look bird-eye view on it, like looking at the model. And other ways to collaborate are caves. In this case, Hive 3D. We will experiment with that next week in the architecture studio and see how people can understand each other's designs better. Okay, so to conclude, for me, the power of VR is in its immersive environment. It really depends on the level of detail and the level of realism. We can make it very abstract, as you saw in the last image. We can also make it very realistic, that you don't see any differences between the real world and the virtual world. It offers scale one-to-one. Most architects work on drawings. They're flat. Yeah? They work on scaled models. Here, we offer one-to-one. We can be in the same room in Amsterdam at the same time with VR. We have a controlled environment. We decide where cars, people, etc. engage each other. It's adaptable. The project I showed with the green, we can adapt it while people are in the VR. We can change objects. And finally, the biometrics, it really delivers important data, relevant data to understand how people perceive the environments we're building. There's also a couple of limitations. Equipment, high-end computers. The last years we had difficulty getting graphical cards, GPUs, because they were used for mining. The headset, it's heavy, it's warm, people get motion sickness. You need skills to make 3D content for modeling. Of course, if you attract people, it might be biased. So you attract people, certain age, a certain group, but that's a problem in a lot of research. Yeah? And the scaling up. So at the moment, we're having courses with 60 students. I have to go up to 400 to 500 students running VR at the same time. I need a lot of equipment, and equipment cannot work together in one room. So that's kind of interesting thing, how to scale up there. So those are my discussion points. I hope I enjoyed it. This was just a pitch to introduce what we are doing. If you have more questions afterwards, I can show lots of projects and show how we apply it. But I assume there will be questions from the audience, isn't it?
Very much. Thank you very much, Stefan, for your great talk. And yes, we still have about 5 minutes for the questions. So please.
Hi, yeah, thank you for the talk. I was wondering if you already collaborate also with other departments in the university, or if you can see this technology also being used for other fields of application outside of architecture, and if you already start using that, collaborating with.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. To be honest, at TU Delft, we have multiple VR labs. The original VR lab started at architecture. In 2019, all the people moved to a central facility. And we are focusing on built environment now. Well, it can be landscape as well, by the way. But and the other labs are also focusing on other questions, like demos, HR, all kind of training, like for chemistry, training how to work in a lab, etc. For the police, fire departments, those kind of stuff. Yeah, we see a lot happening there, absolutely. But again, we are focusing on our field. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there?
How competitive this area is? Are there any northern stars that you are following in your research, in your work, or you are just like the first in using VR in your field?
Oh, we're not the first. There's a lot going on. Well, a bit like the earlier question. We have a couple of labs. We are collaborating with other labs in the Netherlands. So we have established a community there. We're exchanging how to work. But we also collaborate and talk with institutes in other parts of the world. Yeah, VR is used in many cases, in many labs, for different things. We can see that, yeah, in many cases, people just hire out VR headsets. Well, it would be nice if it's used more in the beginning of education instead of just at the end. Yeah, but yeah, a lot is done. If different facilities, well, we talk about headsets here, but you can also talk about a cave, a room 4x4 where you project on the walls. You can also talk about projection tables with 3D content on top of it, where you, yeah, so there are different ways to work with this field, and that's developed worldwide, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, Stefan, once more. Let's have a round of applause. And we will be back in 5 minutes with the next speaker.